Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. It's Mama Me here. It's been a while since I filmed my last video because I just gave birth about 3 weeks ago. In today's video, I want to talk about first pregnancy versus second pregnancy, first baby labor delivery versus second baby delivery, and I want to talk about a little bit difference in terms of the postpartum recovery as well. Before we start, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to this channel, ring the notification bell so that you won't miss out any future content. I've experienced 4 pregnancies and 2 babies, like 2 live births. Okay, so the first thing I want to share is like the pregnancy. So when I first was pregnant, which actually ended up in a miscarriage, I did not know I was pregnant until I missed a period. I think up until I missed a period, I started having symptoms that's not related to period, but related to something else. So instead of having my period, I started feeling like headaches, like my body temperature rises. I started to feel like my limbs are more swollen. So because it was my first time ever pregnancy, I did not really know until like I missed my period about 2 or 3 days. But starting from my second pregnancy, I immediately knew when I felt the implantation, which is very odd because I guess like not everyone kind of feels the implantation, but if you have been pregnant before, you can kind of feel, because you kind of know what are the symptoms after the implantation, because after the implantation, you start having the HCG hormones. Sometimes it's not enough to be picked up by the pregnancy test, but it will cause certain symptoms that may be recognized by yourself. First ever pregnancy compared to the rest of my pregnancy, the major difference is I didn't know I was pregnant until I missed a period by a day or 3. And then with my sequential pregnancy, I knew I was pregnant right away with the rest of the 3. So the second thing is I want to talk about my 2 live birth pregnancy. I'm going to compare the pregnancy actually resulted in a live birth rather than the 2 miscarriages, because there were differences in terms of the symptoms. I was pregnant with my son, which is my first baby. I didn't have major symptoms other than increased body temperature, swollen fingers, and fatigue until like 7 weeks. So at 7 weeks, I started feeling nauseous. I started to have experienced food aversions. My morning decaf coffee started to taste really, really bad. Versus with my second pregnancy, with my second live birth with my daughter, I started experiencing food aversion as early as 3 weeks pregnant, which is a week before I actually missed my period. It's like one day I drank my morning coffee and it tasted really, really bad. And that's when I knew, okay, I'm pregnant. So the same symptoms that I have for both babies, in my first pregnancy, I experienced it a little bit later versus my second pregnancy. I started feeling food aversions as early as 3 weeks pregnant, and I started to have nausea as early as 5 weeks pregnant. Another thing that I would say is that with my first pregnancy, my nausea and food aversion didn't go away until like 18, 19 weeks pregnant, versus the second pregnancy actually went away around 15 weeks pregnant. With my first baby, I started feeling nausea and food aversion a little bit later, but it also went away later. Versus my second baby, I started feeling earlier, but it also went away earlier. So it kind of lasted the same duration of time. Morning sickness or throwing up. So I would say this is probably not because it's my first or second, because I've talked to a lot of moms. They had way more morning sickness. Some of them had way more morning sickness with their first baby. Some of them had way more at second baby. Some of them had way more at their third baby. But personally for me, because I have a boy and a girl, I think my morning sickness was so much stronger with the girl, which is my second pregnancy. With my first pregnancy, I had nausea. I kind of threw up once, but that was pretty much it. Versus with my second baby, I was throwing up twice a day and every other day. I didn't have like very severe one. Like I had a friend who couldn't keep anything down and like almost fainted. I didn't have that, but it was just every day I felt so nauseous, and throwing up actually makes the nausea feel better for a couple of hours or for a day. So I felt like I was in this like cycle of like I wanted to throw up, but I don't want to throw up because I don't like to throw up, but after I throw up I feel better type of thing. So my second pregnancy or my second baby, I felt way worse morning sickness. But according to research, large scale survey study over like thousands of pregnant women did report more severe nausea and vomiting associated with pregnant with a girl. So I don't think it's because it's first baby, second baby. I think it's because the boy and the girl, but it could be different for you. But there was a trend in terms of, there was a correlation in that study. The next thing is fatigue. My first baby, my fatigue was bad, but my second baby, my fatigue was worse. Why? Is because I didn't have a toddler running around. So I definitely felt my fatigue way worse in my second baby compared to the first one, but I don't think it's because of the pregnancy. I think it's because I already have a toddler, which makes it harder to try to power through the fatigue. But I do remember that when I was having my first baby, when I was pregnant with my son, I did describe to people I felt worse than being hit by a truck. I felt worse than COVID. I felt worse than being sick. So, which I think both of the times I felt fatigue pretty bad, but I guess having a baby, having a toddler makes it worse because I'm already pretty tired. Okay, so the next thing is showing the baby bump. So my second baby bump was way bigger than my first baby bump. So with my first baby, I wasn't showing until like 16 weeks. I started to show a little bit of bump, and by the time it's 20 weeks, I felt like, oh, there is a bump, but it's kind of small. It's barely noticeable, versus my second baby, the bump just happened right away around like 12 weeks. So I feel like my bump at 12 weeks with my second baby is the same as my bump at 16 weeks with my first baby. So I feel like everything is like 4 weeks more advanced with my second baby. So with my first baby, I started showing at 16 weeks. With my second one, I started showing a little bit at 12. With my first baby, by the time it's 20 weeks, I felt like there's a baby cute bump, versus the second one is like way bigger. But I would say that there is a difference because my first baby was born at 6 pounds and 11 ounces, and my second baby was born at 7 pounds and 10 ounces. So my second baby was heavier and longer, even though they were both born at 39 weeks and 3 days. So that just means that there are other reasons why my bump was bigger with my second baby, is because, you know, the baby is bigger than the first baby. So you do show a little bit more in the second baby, but I did have a bigger baby the second time. So I think that also contributed the big baby bump. All right, so now let's talk about baby movements. This is very interesting because with my first baby, I keep asking around like women who have been pregnant before, how do you feel? How do you know it's not gas? It's like baby moving around. So I feel like I started really feel the baby movements, like knowing that it's definitely baby movements around 19 weeks. I think the week before my 20-week ultrasound, both me and my husband felt the baby bump, like when I put my husband's hands on my belly. Versus second baby, it's very interesting because my second baby, I started feeling the baby movement around 11 weeks. And I remember around 11 to 12 weeks, there was a time that she was moving a lot, and I put my husband's hands there and he could feel it too. So it's not like gas, because if you put someone else, they don't feel the gas. They actually feel like a kick, like psh. So, which is crazy because according to like a lot of people, you shouldn't feel it until like second trimester, but I felt it even in my first trimester. And another interesting thing is, in my first baby, I had a posterior placenta. With my second baby, I had anterior placenta, which means with anterior placenta, you don't actually feel it until the baby is bigger because the placenta is covering between the belly and the baby. But for some reason, it works for me. I felt it really, really fast. So definitely a very big difference between the two pregnancies. I felt the baby movement so much earlier than my first one. I think part of it is because the baby was probably a little bit bigger from the early on. And the second reason, probably I knew what to look for. I knew what's the difference between gas and the baby movement. Braxton Hicks contractions. My first baby, I did have Braxton Hicks contractions. I felt like my contractions really started around, become noticeable around 28 weeks, but it was more of like, I felt the Braxton Hicks contractions once a week type of thing. It's like I'm walking and suddenly I felt a little bit contractions. I stopped for a few minutes and drink some water and it's away. Versus my second baby, I also started to feel like Braxton Hicks contractions around 27, 28 weeks. I think both pregnancies, my Braxton Hicks contractions become noticeable towards the end of second trimester or the beginning of the third trimester. But with the second baby, the Braxton Hicks contractions felt way stronger, and it's towards the point that sometimes I have to drop everything I do. It is way more painful than my first baby. I also have prodromal labor, which is false labor contractions. So these are real contractions that doesn't go away like Braxton Hicks. Like Braxton Hicks, if you change positions, drink some water, take a break, change the positions and change whatever you're doing, it should go away really fast. Versus prodromal labor will last for like hours, and no matter what you do, it will still feel like you will still feel the contractions. But those are the contractions that doesn't really progress. Like you don't actually have stronger contractions over time. You actually don't feel contractions are getting like closer and closer to each other. So with the first baby, I had prodromal labor about 4 days before the baby was born. With my second baby, I started feeling prodromal labor around 36 weeks and or even 35. Like I felt like the baby was gonna born before full term, but then I had prodromal labor every other day, which is pretty rough, honestly. I hated the prodromal labor because it felt painful, but it doesn't get stronger. All right, guys, baby just woke up a little bit. So yeah, prodromal labor, the false labor contractions, way stronger with my second baby, which is very annoying because people keep telling me like, you should take some rest before the baby comes, sleep as much as you could. But towards the last 3 weeks of my pregnancy, starting at 37 weeks, I will wake up in the middle of the night having labor contractions from 2 o'clock to like 4, or sometimes from 2 o'clock to 5. And then the contraction usually slow down after the sun goes up, which is very annoying. So I couldn't sleep well towards the end of my pregnancy, especially in my second baby. It's like so bad. Now let's talk about mental preparation. With my first baby, I read a lot of studies. I read a lot of things. With my second baby, I also did so, especially when I'm experiencing symptoms, but I feel way more prepared and I knew what was going on. But there were definitely difference between the two, so especially closer to the labor. So now let's talk about the difference between the first baby and the second baby in terms of the labor. Talk about early labor. A lot of times people were like, the first baby is gonna come a little bit late, the second baby is gonna a little bit early. I had 2 babies, and they are actually 2 years apart. Actually, I waited exactly 18 months before I tried again because, you know, it's like whatever is like great for the pregnancy outcomes for the second one. So for the first baby, I wasn't induced. I actually went into labor by myself at 39 weeks and 3 days, versus the second time I kept having like prodromal labor, the false labor contractions towards the and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I was actually induced at 39 and 3 days. So technically, if I didn't induce, my second baby would have gone closer to the due date or past the due date. So let's talk about early labor. My first baby, I did not have much early labor. I just had 1 prodromal labor, and before I went in, before I really kick into labor having contractions, I actually had no dilation. I had 50% effaced, and the baby was like negative station 3. So I didn't have any dilation before I went into the labor. But the second time, I feel like my early labor lasted for 2 weeks at least. I think 2 centimeters dilation by the time it's like exactly 39 weeks. And then by the time I was induced, I was 3 centimeters. So I would say that my early labor felt longer with my second baby compared to the first baby. But that is what we call early labor. What is early labor? Early labor is when you have when you kick into labor, when you actually had some dilation, but it doesn't always progress really fast. It can last for many hours. It could last for a few days. It could last for a couple of weeks. Like your early labor is like super slow. It could be faster. But for me, my first baby, my early labor was faster. I was in contractions in the morning on Thursday. And then by the time it was in the evening, I dilated 3 centimeters. By the time it was like 10 o'clock, I dilated 4, and then I gave birth on the same day. So my early labor was faster with my first baby. With my second baby, I went to my doctor checkup. I was dilated 1, dilated 2, dilated 3, but it was just very slow. My dilation actually lasted for like a few weeks to progress. And however, when it comes to active labor, my active labor has been very fast with both babies. So with my first baby, my active labor started at 4 centimeters, maybe 4.5 centimeters. And I think my active labor started around 10 p.m. and then the baby was born 11:59. So from active labor to the baby was born was 2 hours. Versus my second active labor started at 5 centimeters at 5 p.m. By the time it's 6 p.m., the girl was born. So I went from 5 centimeters to 10 centimeters in 45 minutes, really fast. And then they told me not to push until like my husband came back, until the doctors comes in, until everyone got ready, the whole delivery team is ready, and then my active, they told me to push. So technically, very rarely active labor only lasts for an hour or 2. Usually, study shows on average, after your active labor starts with your first baby, you progress 1 centimeters every 2 hours. With your second baby, you progress 1 centimeters 1 per hour. So for me, I progressed 5 centimeters in 1 hour, which is very rare. But because I delivered in the same hospital, and because my doctor and my nurses, they all know about my first labor situation, so they were all aware, because they were like, you cannot wait until active labor to get epidural, because if you wait until active labor starts, you may not be able to get epidural because you will progress so fast. So this time I knew once I was like 4 centimeters, I was like, give me the epidural because I'm gonna progress from there. So which actually helps. But very rarely, like according to my nurse, it almost never happens. Like no one progressed from 4 centimeters to 10 centimeters in 1.5 hours for my first labor. And no one progressed from 5 centimeters to 10 in 40 minutes like my second labor. So it was very rare situation, but it's also saying like every single pregnancy is different and every single mom is different. It's individualized. But I would say my second baby active labor is a little bit faster than the first labor, because the first labor, the active labor lasts for 1.5 hours. The second time, the active labor lasts for like 45 minutes. All right, so now let's talk about the actual pushing, like the pushing of the baby. The first time when I was giving birth to my son, I pushed about 15 minutes, but my son was really small, so I was like, that's probably why. But with my daughter, since she's bigger, she was born 7 pounds and 10 ounces. I was like, it's probably gonna take longer to push because the ultrasound also measured her a little bit bigger. She has way bigger head. However, I pushed for 6 minutes. So I would say the actual pushing time with my second baby was half of the time as my first baby, even though my second baby is larger, which is very interesting. It just shows that the baby size doesn't always correlate with how long you push. Personally, I feel like my second labor was progressed faster after the active labor starts, so I was having very strong contractions. With my second time, my epidural worked on one side. So my right side, I completely lost the feeling. Like when you touch my leg, I don't feel anything. With my left side, I could feel a little bit numb, but I could feel everything. So when I was pushing, they just took away all the contraction monitors. And they were like, since you can feel the contractions and the pressure, we're just gonna push when you say you're having it. And so the nurse was helping me to put the top of her hand on the top of my uterus, and also I was feeling the contractions purely on my left side pelvis and the pressure. So I was able to push like 3 times in each contractions. And after 3 contractions, the baby was born. So I would say the second time I pushed for 6 minutes and the baby was born, and her head, it was actually measured at 70 something percentile. So she doesn't have a small head, she doesn't have a small body, she's actually pretty long. She's measured at 90 percentile in height. So even though she's way bigger baby than my first one, I actually pushed shorter time. So if you're noticing you'll have a bigger baby, you don't worry too much. But I think part of it is because it's my second time pushing. I knew exactly what's going on. I knew exactly how to do it. The fact that I only felt one side of epidural, the other side, I felt epidural, but it was just a little numb. Right after labor, I could stand on one foot on the left side, but I couldn't put any pressure on the right side because I can't feel anything, which is okay. Like, at least one side doesn't feel the pain. The other side, I felt on my left side, I still felt painful, but I felt a little bit tingling numb. So I think it still helped to alleviate the pain, but it's not completely numb. Talk about the postpartum. So the postpartum with the first one, I felt I had more bleeding with my first baby postpartum, and I felt very weak. I think also because of the excessive bleeding, because I have a bleeding disorder. But with my second baby, I felt okay. I took a shower within the same day. I think I gave birth and then I transitioned to the room around 10 o'clock. And then I took a shower at 2 a.m. Like, I was like, oh, I felt gross, I'm gonna take a shower. So with my second baby, maybe it's because I've done it before, I feel like my body actually knows how to heal better. I feel like it actually took shorter time to recover postpartum with my second baby. However, there is one issue because I have pubic symphysis from my first labor and pregnancy. The second time, I actually, like around 34 weeks, I already felt my pubic symphysis is back because the hormones during the like close to the end of the pregnancy, it kind of helps you to open your joints a little bit, prepare for birth. I felt like my joints are way more loose with the second pregnancy. So I could definitely feel that my joints are way more loose with my second pregnancy, but my muscles actually recover better and faster in my second baby. The physical recovery or the physical changes from first baby to the second baby was that during the first baby, since my body has never been pregnant and progressed that long with a pregnancy, I felt like there were not many changes around my joints until labor occurred, versus with my second baby, since my joints already changed, especially my pubic bone, my hips, and my body already knows what's going on. Once the hormone of relaxin kick in, my joints are all loose. So with my second baby, I really had to pay attention to when I work out. I have to really pay attention to my body when I stretch, because I can't put pressure over certain joints to reduce the chance of injury. Even after the postpartum, my pubic symphysis is way worse with my second baby versus first baby, but my ab muscles and everything actually did not change. If anything, I feel like I could do a full push-up with my second pregnancy is over around 3 weeks, which is pretty crazy. My abs did not separate at all, even though she was pretty big in my belly. So I would say muscle-wise, second baby actually was easier for me to recover, but with my bones, with my joints, I do feel like second baby was harder to recover. Mental health-wise, I would say my mental health was better with my first baby pregnancy and postpartum. My mental health definitely is harder with the second baby because I have a toddler to attend to, and then I can't just focus on myself and the baby. I have to focus on another toddler. So I think that definitely creates more stress and anxiety over my mental health, versus my first pregnancy. I felt like I was just so happy that I was finally pregnant. I was finally, like, you know, giving birth. I just felt way happier, versus second time I always felt a little bit stressed out and a little bit anxious. So mental health wise, first baby was significantly easier than the second baby. And also with the first baby, since like it's the first time I hold a baby, I was like, oh my god. All right guys, I am back. I just put the baby back to her crib. So overall, let's conclude the difference between first baby and a second baby. In terms of the pregnancy, I would say significantly easier with the first baby compared to my second. The main reason was because my joints already loose from the first one, and also I had to chase a toddler, which makes it way more stressful and tiring. With the labor, I would say the second baby was a little bit faster with active labor, but a little bit slower during the early stage of labor. And it's not always true. Your first baby may not be always past the full term. Your second baby may not always be earlier. It really depends on the baby, depends on your hormones. My mental health was better with first baby, but my actual physical health was better with my second baby. I gained the same amount of weight with both pregnancies, but the second time I felt like the weight was gained a little bit differently, which I think made me a little bit harder to lose the postpartum weight as well, to lose the pregnancy weight as well. I gained 50 pounds with both pregnancies. If you actually gain only 30, you will lose really, really fast. Like I already lost 27 pounds and it's almost 4 weeks postpartum now. So I would say if you only gain 30, you probably lose it really, really fast. But if you gain like 50 like me, it's probably going to take a little bit of time, but give yourself a little bit patient. I'm so glad and grateful that I had 2 healthy babies, 2 healthy pregnancies, even though my first pregnancy definitely had more high-risk factors like placenta previa. I had anemia with my first baby, but because I was taking prenatal ever since, I was able to be really healthy nutrition-wise, like other blood work-wise with the second pregnancy. So definitely if you're planning to have a baby in the future, start taking prenatal right now, maybe a year ahead, maybe 6 months ahead, but definitely starting to take prenatal right now. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. These are the things I could think of. For now, maybe I'll think of more and do episode number 2. So that's it for today's video. If you're trying to get pregnant, or if you're pregnant with your first or second, if you're planning to be pregnant again with your second baby, I hope this video can be helpful to you as well. The first baby is not necessarily always easier. The second baby is not always harder. It really depends. But for me, it definitely is easier in certain ways with the first one, but definitely I also encounter way more issues with my first one. So yeah, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. And before you go, make sure you thumbs up and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!